Yolok, everyone, and welcome to my impressions of Dragon Avenger, the second novel of the Age of Fire. It follows Wistala, Auron's sister. Just like last time, I'm going to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, discussing just enough to give you an idea of what to expect and why my impressions are what they are. However, anything from Dragon Champion will be fair game, since it would just be weird to look at a review for Book 2 without reading the first, you know? Just like its predecessor, Dragon Avenger is divided into 3 sections, Hatchling, Draka, and Dragonelle, and begins at the moment of Wistala's hatching. There's plenty of differences though, so don't think you're just getting a lazy copy-paste of the first 50 pages. On top of seeing those heartbreaking events through Wistala's eyes, Irelia told the sisters many stories while Auron was busy ranging about and bullying his brother. Of particular importance is the story of Silverhigh, an ancient city of dragons which eventually became decadent, deluded, and too weak to defend itself from its enemies. Can relate. After watching her family die and escaping by the skin of her teeth, her life is saved by an elf named Rainfall. In sharp contrast to Dragon Champion, a huge chunk of this book involves her returning the favor by helping her savior around his estate. Young drakes have an instinctual wanderlust that drives them to explore far and wide to stake out a claim of decent territory. Auron managed to cover an impressive amount of distance before putting roots down. Draka, however, are more than happy to just settle down in the first decent area they find and chill. That's not to say there's a lack of action or conflict, far from it, but most of it takes place in the neighborhood. We saw a good bit of dwarves and blighters with Auron and a few humans, but the only elf of note in the entire story was Hazeleye. Now we get a closer look at them. Night takes their classic nature-loving thematic and makes it a part of their very biology. They sprout leaves and other planty appendages out of their hair, at least when they're not struck by crippling depression. They aren't immortal, but they do live a very long time. I'd wager a good bit longer than the 600 years we saw a pair of dwarves make it to, but still far short of the 6,000 that a dragon can reach, if Numoak's boast is accurate. And it turns out they actually do turn into trees when they die, so that's a thing. Since Auron is scaleless, we get our first look from this new perspective at how metal hunger feels. It's strong. Really strong. Upon seeing a treasure trove of precious metals, the instinct to possess and gorge is so powerful that it makes a dragon a threat to everyone around them, friend or foe. They can completely lose control of themselves if they're not careful, especially if it's been a while and their scales are suffering. It's not really hard to see why dragons don't get along with the other races. On top of that, even a whiff of any sort of metal triggers intense, thick salivation to help gulp it down. Ever try to swallow a quarter? It's not easy. Also, don't. Wistala more than earns her keep during her stay. She's a clever girl, quite creative, and her ideas are instrumental in getting the place back on track and protecting her new family. Most dragons pride themselves on getting by with only what nature has gifted to them, but Tala makes use of everything available to help give her an advantage and even the odds. She's much more tactical than even her brother, and her environment is her weapon just as much as her claws and flame. So she solves problems, one after the other, until she finds herself up against an enemy more terrifying than any troll or dragon slayer. Government. She's much more of a people person than Auron, too. Her interactions with the locals are fun and heartwarming after she gets to know them. Especially with Rainfall, they're just a treat together. Super cute. Tala learns a lot about hominids over her years of interaction, including how to read them and eventually even manipulate them through a rather unexpected medium. You'll see what I mean. Unfortunately, the book is called Dragon Avenger, not Dragon Housekeeper, so you totally know that it's doomed from the start. You just don't know how or when. All of that tension from Dragon Champion? Yeah, it's still around. When things are happening, you've got this sinking feeling of dread, like, oh god, is this where it all goes to shit? Is this where? Is it finally time? And then it does, and you're like, fuck man, I knew it was coming, but it still sucks. Unsurprisingly, a core theme of the book is revenge and how dragons feel about and enact it. In a word, they consider it a duty to avenge kin and kindred. Auron let the murder of his parents slide, but he did swear vengeance when he had to mercy kill his best friend, though he seemed willing to spare the Dragon Master after he single-handedly destroyed his entire operation. Revenge for a dragon seems to be about threat elimination and protection, not pleasure. The kill at that point was superfluous and unnecessary. I'm sure Natasich or someone would have gobbled him up anyway if he hadn't committed honorable Mitsubishi. There were only a dozen or so very pissed off Dragonelles right behind him, and someone surely would have felt differently, but still. Wistala, on the other paw, felt its call from very early on in life. Her father actually tells her off, insisting that a Dragonelle's vengeance is taken by having lots and lots of hatchlings, and she makes that promise too. But she never lets go of her dream of righteous retribution. She bides her time, until she's strong enough to come for those responsible. And she does. But how do you come for an entire city of dwarves who specialize in dragon slaying? How do you attack an impregnable fortress that your own father couldn't even scratch? Well, you improvise. You scheme, you lie, you wait. You play a game of shadows and turn your enemies against each other. You throw honor to the wind, and use every tool in your kit, every piece on your board, to create a storm that no dragon could ever even dream of commanding on their own. Interestingly, Wistala's vengeance is laser-focused on the single person responsible for the assassination. She's not afraid to condemn others to their deaths as a means to get to her target. Hundreds and thousands when all said and done, I'm sure, but she does feel regret for the act. It's a grim necessity to her. She's not a genocidal maniac, though she'd have every right to be after seeing the things she did at such a young age. When the dust settles, she's not entirely sure if she's done right or wrong. She just knows that it had to be done to spare other hatchlings out there the same fate. She's not being a hero. She's being something more. The moral gray area here is quite refreshing in a genre that is filled to the gills with protagonists who are simply too good and pure to feel genuine. I'm sorry to say that the book's pacing is much the same as Dragon Champion, and the setup for the final climax and the events themselves feel, well, rushed. This is turning into a pattern, and it may just be Knight's style as an author. Unfortunately, it's a much bigger problem this time around. We're not dealing with a back-to-the-wall YOLO moment here. This is careful planning and devious manipulation that needs to be thoroughly laid out. The chain of events needs to make sense from everybody's perspective, and if you rush it, it comes across as unbelievable and far too easy. There's one moment I'm thinking of in particular that feels extremely forced for the sake of the plot. The motivations and reasoning of one character at the end, you'll know who I'm talking about, is left pretty unclear and desperately needed some more fleshing out. I was like, wait, what? Really? Just like that? You're gonna do a complete 180 just because you're asked nicely? While all that is literally happening right behind you. And after everything you said just a few days ago, you're just cool with that, are you? There are certainly ways to make it make sense, and I can think up a headcanon that leaves a satisfying conclusion, but these things can't be left up to the imagination. If something doesn't make sense without inventing stuff, that's an oversight at best and a plot hole at worst. Additionally, Wistala's own actions during the climax are a little inconsistent. She has a strange ambivalence towards the fate of another certain someone that she really should want to kill personally as much as her primary target. We don't even get to see what happens to him. Again, I can headcanon it out, but guesswork can't be a part of understanding your main character. If I'm right about why, it could have been such a cool moment, but as it stands, it's just a missed opportunity. But I'm making it sound like a total train wreck, and it just isn't. Not by a long shot. There are some really badass bits to it too, and we get to see Tala's terrifying cunning on full display. This is not someone you want to piss off. She doesn't play fair, she plays to win, and it's glorious. All in all, Dragon Avenger gets a carefully prepared roar of approval. It is a weaker story than Dragon Champion, there's no getting around it, but it is still a fantastic book that anyone even a little enamored with dragons is sure to love. If book 1 is a 10 out of 10, and it very well might be, Auron is a total boss, I'd give this one something like an 8.5. Definitely pick it up. You won't regret it for a second. And that's about it. As always, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below to chat about the book should you feel so inclined. Talking about dragons feels good, man. May you be blessed. See ya. God damn it, now I have to read about the fucking copper.